you keep swinging the axe and keep chopping wood, if you will, and eventually the tree will fall and you'll be back, day after day after day, and stick to the process and keep practicing and keep grinding, and eventually, if you keep swinging the axe, the tree's going to fall.
Here with Zach Keefer, and this is the latest edition of Chopping Wood, our weekly podcast. We talk all things Colts, and there's a lot of Colts to talk about. Zach, there has been, since we last did this, there's been a football game.
It's a sunny picture over here on West 56th Street today, this week, this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, if you want to feel good about yourself, you came to the right place. No, we have nothing good to say, actually. We have nothing good to offer you. But the good news is, the upshot, is that you'll probably feel really good about your own life when you're done with this podcast. So just brace yourselves. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be lots of sunshine coming your way here any second. So we got a lot to cover. 27-0 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, that really happened.
It sounds worse when you say it out loud.
27-0. Okay. So anyhow, that did happen. You weren't dreaming. Sorry. And then, obviously, that led to speculation about the coach and his job status and future. And there's also Malik Hooker being out for the season. There's some guys coming back, so that's good. Then you had the Pro Bowl wide receiver, had a few things to say. So it's been an interesting week. Other than that, there's been nothing going on.
Give this team credit. For 2-5, they're not boring. This has been
that's a hard thing to do.
Eventful week in a lot of different ways. And you go back to a week ago, right? A week ago at this time, we were sitting here recording this podcast after Chris Ballard had come in and told us that Andrew Luck was going to be shut down for a couple of weeks. So we have news on that front as well after talking to Chuck Pagano about that today.
Yeah.
For those of you thinking, he's done for the season and that decision's been made, think again. But obviously a lot to dive into right now, starting with the team that's just not very good.
Yeah, so they are what they are. Look, they're a bad football team.
And when they play bad, they've been playing okay in recent weeks, especially in the first part of the game. When they play bad, it looks awful.
That's so true.
That's the bottom of the tank for this team is what you saw on Sunday. No position group played well.
Sunday felt like the season opener all over again.
Yeah.
Not so much on the scoreboard. It wasn't much different, frankly, but it wasn't 46-9, but it might as well have been. Mm-hmm. I didn't see anything in that game where you could hang your hat on it and say, well, at least they did that. I don't even know what that would be. There was nothing. So we don't need to rehash it all. We don't need to rehash the 10 sacks, the 518 yards by the Jaguars. We don't need to rehash that, right?
That just puts you in a worse mood, right?
Right.
Everyone out there listening.
Right. And remember, we're here to cheer you up, right? So, that's what we do. This is where you come for your sunshine. So anyhow, we don't need to rehash all that, so we won't. Let's just fast forward to 4 p.m. on Sunday and everything that happened from then on. The game was what it was. We wrote about it. We talked about it. It is what it is. So a couple things. We'll start with Chuck Pagano. He's still the coach. I personally think he's going to be the coach the rest of the season, and we'll get into why here. But that I thought that if anything could have maybe changed the landscape, I felt all year. Let me back up. I felt all year that Chuck Pagano was going to get all of 2017. I never really thought there was really much to be gained by firing him when Chris Ballard got here. The timing wasn't good and all that. But I thought once we got to this year, I figured, look, there's really not much at this point that can change.
Yeah.
And that he's going to be the coach. But then I watched that game on Sunday, and I was like, ooh, I don't know. This one was worse than I ever imagined.
There's a legitimate argument on both sides, and I understand the upset fans, especially the ones that, bless their heart, that sat through that game on Sunday.
There were like 12
quarter.
people left, at least.
That's some serious wood chopping right there. But look, who are you going to replace him with? You don't just make a move just to make a move. This is one side of the argument. Who are you going to replace him with? Rob Chudzinski has not had a good couple of weeks, let's be honest. The defense is off to a historically awful start. We'll get into that later, and I've got the numbers to back it up. Ted Monachino, no way. Who?
He's a first-year coordinator. Well, second-year coordinator.
Second-year coordinator. Has never been a DC before that.
Right.
Joe Philbin, I mean, his line just gave up an Indianapolis-era record 10 sacks. And I know he's got head coaching experience, but no. I mean, Greg Doyle wrote in his column the other day, Chuck Pagano has almost safeguarded his job by surrounding himself with incompetence. So you don't just make a move to make a move. And the other thing, and I agree with you on this, is, look, this is Jim Irsay's decision. He's never fired a coach midseason, and if you go back before the Peyton Manning years, there were plenty of times when you should have fired a coach midseason, right?
Right.
As an owner, he's never fired a coach midseason. There's no candidate that just screams at you, he deserves it. But on the flip side, I understand those who are just saying, you're just sticking with incompetence right now because it's not going to change, it hasn't changed, and clearly Chuck is not fixing these issues right now.
Here's the question that I have asked people when they stop me in the grocery store or at the gym or wherever. Happens a lot, especially these days because they're so angry. But here's what I've told people. Do you think the Colts could have lost that game 27-0 without Chuck Pagano? Because I sure as hell believe they could have lost that game in the exact same fashion. So what I'm saying is not to say, oh, Chuck Pagano's doing a great job or defending Chuck Pagano. I'm actually doing anything but that. I'm just saying their problems go beyond Chuck Pagano. And I don't know that it matters at this point. You have a coaching issue and you have a talent issue.
Right.
And they are converging right now.
Right.
The coaching issue is not going to get resolved because you fire Chuck Pagano.
It's not like Rob Chudzinski's going to light a fighter under the offense and they're going to start scoring 30 points a game.
I mean, Rob Chudzinski, that the offense is basically his domain. He's
right.
He's basically head coach of half the team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm comfortable saying that as well. Yeah.
Right. And
every indication we've gotten is Chuck Pagano is not tied in with the offense as much as maybe other head coaches.
Right.
But look, I mean, you're not going to the playoffs this year. You're not lighting a fire and winning 4 games in December and making a wild card run. It's not happening. And that's why I think Chuck Pagano is probably the coach for the rest of the year. But I understand those who just are tired of watching what they're watching because we're tired of watching it too.
Yeah. The other argument, and don't get me wrong, this is not my argument. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just presenting why they would do this, right? The other thing I hear from people a lot is, well, you got to do something to prevent the fans from jumping overboard. Well, the problem with that is, all right, let's say they fire Chuck Pagano 5 minutes from now. Are you suddenly running to the box office to buy tickets? No.
It doesn't change the talent level on this team.
You're still going to be angry. You just won't have him to be angry at. So I get it. Look, you would feel better. Most people would probably feel better. It would give them some measure of satisfaction if Chuck Pagano was fired. I get that. When you're emotionally tied in, I get that. You want somebody to pay. But the net result is very minimal, if anything at all. So it is what it is. The other thing here that's less obvious, and Zach and I just talked about this before we hit the record button here, Chris Ballard is a big factor here. Okay, Chris Ballard, well, let me back up. I think Jim Irsay is taking his cues from Chris Ballard. He's doing what a good owner should do for the most part, and I think since Chris Ballard was hired, I think this has been the case. He's taking his cues from his GM, and using his own experience, obviously, to chime in when necessary. But Jim Irsay has sounded a lot like Chris Ballard over the past few months. Which is,
ding, ding.
Right? Which is, hey, bear with us. It's going to take some time. Be patient. That is like the antithesis of everything Jim Irsay has ever said. Okay, Mr. Multiple Super Bowls.
Right.
So what I'm getting at is part of the reason it doesn't really matter right now to people in the building who the coach is because it was never about this year. It's not about next week. It's not about the week after. It's not about 2017.
And that doesn't make you feel better going to the game on Sunday and watching that. I understand that. But, and this is something I know for a fact, and I know you know as well from talking to people in and around this building, Jim Irsay spent 3 weeks last year after the season before he fired Ryan Grigson going around and talking to football people he knows and trusts. And they gave him an honest assessment of his roster. And that was, it was a bad team. It was a bad defense. And it was a bad team being camouflaged by the great play of a quarterback. And you're seeing that right now. And we'll get into this in a little bit. Andrew Luck, I mean, it's a miracle the guy won 11 games with this team with no running game and a bad offensive line and a decent defense 3 years in a row. We all know that. Everybody knows that. But you're seeing how bad this roster is right now, and you're seeing that it's going to take a long haul to get it fixed. I mean, he talked to Peyton Manning last season. What do you think Peyton Manning said about this team when he watched it?
And I think Jim Irsay needed to hear those things.
Yeah. Because I don't know if Ryan Grigson was telling him those things. Obviously,
no, I know he
had a dog in the fight. But I mean, Peyton Manning's the guy who said he has that great quote about teams celebrating their last win being the 8th win of the season, and they're not going to the playoffs, but they're celebrating like they just won a playoff game. And no, you stink. You only won 8 games. So
disgusting.
Bill Polian told me that he told him this. He told Irsay exactly where they were. And I guarantee you when Chris Ballard got here, coming from a team in Kansas City that's so balanced, he told him the same thing. Look, this is where you're at. And the moves Chris Ballard has made reflect that, right? It shows you what Chris Ballard thought of the roster when he got here to what he's done with it now.
That's why 50% of the roster is different.
I mean, there's 26 new players and 53. So it's a process, going to take some time. And I think Jim Irsay is understanding that. At the end of the day, you're not going to talk about the 2017 season. I mean, in years to come, this is going to be a forgotten year because there's just nothing that can be accomplished this year.
Yeah, I really believe that Chris Ballard, at some point, either when he first got hired or in the subsequent months, he convinced Jim Irsay that, look, it's time to just blow this thing up and start over. And you have to be willing to stomach that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about you being Jim Irsay. And Jim Irsay bought into that. He clearly bought that.
And he doesn't like it. And it's not easy for him. And you go back to draft day. We talked to Jim Irsay, and he was talking about the patience. He was preaching the patience. And then a minute later, he'd be like, well, Andrew Luck, and he's in year 6, and we want to make the playoffs. So he's sort of conflicting emotions here. But I think at the end of the day, Chris Ballard's going to get through Jim Irsay's head. You're going to have to lose for a couple years. And I wrote about this at the start of the season.
Yeah, it's like in the cartoons, the old cartoons with the good angel and the bad angel on the shoulder. That's Jim Irsay. He's like, on the one hand, well, yeah, if we can just sign a couple free agents and maybe slap it together, we can win 9 games.
I'll spend the money. I'll spend the money.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's got no problem doing that. That's the problem, though. They've tried to buy it, and as you know, that didn't work out so well. So anyway, that should give you a little sense of why Chuck Pagano's still here. It's not that there's not accountability or any of that. And I understand that's been the argument I've gotten a lot is, well, you fire him, even though it doesn't matter, you fire him to show that there's accountability. Oh, I assure you, there's going to be some accountability here real soon.
Right.
I mean,
let's
just put it out there.
Don't get confused. I mean,
he's done.
He's done. I'd be stunned if he can pull off another miracle. But look, I mean, this is not to be overlooked as well. Jim Irsay is very fond of Chuck Pagano. Personally, that's very evident. He's very fond of Ryan Grigson.
Stop.
So there's a chance. No. I can't even convince myself. No.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute. Who are you right now?
No.
No, I think
we'll get there. We'll get there.
I know people are saying right now, oh yeah, but what about 2 years ago? Oh well, I know, I get that, but the difference here is the GM and the coach are on different footings, and the GM is going to drive this decision in large part, I think.
And what has the GM said about how this coach will be evaluated? Development over the course of the year, seeing the defense get better, seeing the young players improve, seeing signs of progress. They're getting worse. Yeah. They're getting worse, and everyone's clear as day. I mean, it's obvious.
They're not developing players. There's no question about that.
Right.
So,
I mean, TJ Green, he's lost. I mean, that's a perfect example.
And he's going to have to play a little more, by the way, so that should be fun. So, anyway, I told you we'd make you feel better about yourself. See? So now you're stuck with Chuck Pagano, and I know that's the news you wanted. So let's talk about another guy who sort of spurred some conversation this week, T.Y. Hilton. Look, I don't think – well, first of all, let's recap what he said. So after the game, he was asked, what can you guys do offensively to get this thing going? He says, well, the offensive line's got to block. And then he was asked a follow-up about, well, what can you guys as receivers do to maybe get this thing going? Of course, he said nothing. He said the offensive line got to block.
We got to take some pride up front.
Take some pride.
I'm quoting T.Y. We got to take some pride up front. How would they like it if they were getting beat back there.
It's kind of calling out your manhood
look,
there.
all he's doing is just defending his quarterback.
Okay.
All right, here's my question.
First of all, T.Y. only defends T.Y. Okay,
Right.
let's
Right.
start with that.
Was T.Y. wrong in what he said, or was he wrong in the avenue in which he said it?
That is a fair question. He was 100% wrong for saying it because in the forum that he did, because nothing good is going to come out of that. Now, as a reporter, look, you always love, having fodder, right? Of course.
I mean, I like it when guys are honest.
I do. I'm
never going to fault a guy for being honest. It probably wasn't the time to say it. And you can't say it and then add on like, we were fine. We did our job.
That's the
You can't do that.
Yeah.
You
Not
can't
when
do
you
that.
didn't score a point,
Not
dude.
when you made 3 catches in 2 weeks and
They didn't score.
they didn't score.
Zach, they didn't score. No, not like they didn't have, they didn't
Oh,
have
I
a few
saw
yards.
it.
Or,
I saw it. First
they
time
didn't
since
score.
1993. I was 6 years old in 1993.
It's amazing. I was a little older
6
than
or 7 or
but
something.
whatever. That's not the point. Yeah, no. So to answer your question, was he? It's complicated. He was. There was certainly a lot of truth in what he said, but you can't do it, and the reason you can't do it is because, look, it's a team, and when you start doing that, it starts to devolve.
This isn't a team. They're not a team.
I mean,
Well, who's the leader on this team?
Well, but that's the other thing, though. He's supposed to be one of them. Now we know he's not.
Just because you're the best player doesn't mean you're the leader.
Well, there's a void of leadership, right?
I'm getting to something here.
Yeah. There's a void of leadership, and he supposedly said he was willing to step into that void somewhat, and he was saying the right things, right?
I can't roll
in
my
training
eyes
camp.
enough right now.
And in fact, for the past year, he's been saying this. Since Reggie's been gone, he's been saying this. Have you seen it? Have you seen it at all?
No.
Of course not.
T.Y. is a baller. I mean, he can play. He is one of the talents in this league, and I will never take that away from him. But a leader, no, I don't see it. And you hate to go back to the comparisons about the previous era, but that's what Jim Irsay does, and it's what we'll do here. Who is the guy in the leader room that will walk up to T.Y., whether he's an offensive lineman or not, and say, that was BS what you did. That was uncalled for. I don't think Anthony Costanzo is that guy.
No.
I don't think I can't think of anybody
I don't
besides
know if there
maybe
is a guy.
Andrew Luck. Is absolutely a leader in his own way, but he's not playing right now, so it's really hard to see how he would respond to that.
And do you even think he has it in him to go to T.Y. Hilton and call him out? I don't see Andrew Luck doing that. It would be nice.
I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I think there's
quietly,
more to that. Yeah,
quietly. It would be privately with no one around. He'd probably call him on the phone.
There's a void of leadership at the top, and it's hurting this team on the field. They're already lacking in talent on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't beat Jacoby Brissett. He's been here for a blink of an eye. But absolutely, there's a void of leadership at the top. And when your 2 best offensive players, if you want to call them that, are Anthony Costanzo and T.Y. Hilton, and they haven't figured this out, that's a serious problem. That's representative of this whole team and where they're at right now, and it's a mess.
And that leads to another related point. One of the things that I see with this team is when things start sort of getting off course during a game, they can't pull the car back on the road. Like when it goes off the course, okay, believe me, they're going off the cliff.
You know why?
Completely off the cliff. And isn't that related?
Who's the guy that swerves them back on the road every single time?
Yeah.
The once-in-a-generation quarterback they had, saving their behind the last couple of years. I go back to Green Bay last year, a game they had, they were leading, they were playing great the whole time. Green Bay comes back, they take the lead. The Colts need to come back and really show some resolve late in the game, and Luck makes some baller plays at the end of that one. Those are the kind of things you don't see this year at all. They don't have that sort of resolve. They don't have that guy to get them back on track.
Yep.
Certainly not T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, and I think even more than just the act of making the play that changes the game, what Andrew Luck gives you is that belief from those other guys too.
Yeah.
Because they know he has that potential.
Right.
So they tell themselves, you know what, let's just hang on here, man, because Luck might bail us out.
Yeah.
I mean, because how many times has he done it, right?
Right.
And he'll make a play that puts the other team on its heels, and now the other team's like, oh boy, here it comes. Here it comes. And so now they're questioning themselves. So, I mean, this is a very psychological game. And a big part of it's psychological, and they don't have the most mentally tough guy on the roster. He's not in the lineup, and that's Andrew Luck, no question about it.
And you've heard this a million times. difference between winning a game and coming really close to winning is enormous in this league, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew Luck has sort of camouflaged all these deficiencies in the roster for 5.5 years, and they were able to win enough games to win those division titles and make those runs in the playoffs.
Right.
And he was just masking all these flaws that we're seeing come to the surface right now, and it's never looked worse. It's never looked worse than it did Sunday.
No, you're right. I don't know. I don't know what to do. So I guess this counts as good news. They're getting a couple guys back here. It's going to be a little bit, but Clayton Gathers and Denzel Good are practicing today. They are playing football in some capacity. But it's going to be a little bit. Clayton Gathers, you had a talk with him today.
Yeah.
He's been out, I guess, since last December, mid-December, I want to say, week 15 or so.
4 days before Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow, November. Okay. That's right. The DeMarco Murray play,
Correct.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Great play.
Game-saving tackle.
Right. Best defensive
DeMarco
play they
Murray.
probably made all year.
Helped them get to 8-8. Woohoo. Anyway, he's been out since November of last year. It's almost a year now. I mean, is he ready? Can he do this? We're talking about a neck injury. What'd you come away with?
He really does believe he's going to play this year, and I believe him. Now, to recap, I mean, this was the last resort. I mean, we thought it was a concussion early on. That's what it was listed as, and you kind of talked to him, and he was like, less, encouraging in terms of returning late last year.
Right.
They waited. It was a bulging disc in his neck. Surgery was the last resort. That happened in March. I mean, usually guys have an off-season surgery like Andrew Luck. It's going to be in January. He had it in March, so they waited for 2 months. So that was the last resort. No training camp, no mini camp. You know about this. PUP list. They have 21 days to make a decision on whether he comes back or he goes back to IR. But look, I mean, he's like their second best defender. I mean,
I need him.
I mean, if he can return to the form that he was at last year, that's a huge boost. I'm not saying, that changes this team's overall record. But if you have the choice of having Clayton Gathers on the field and having him not on the field, obviously you want him back.
Right.
And I asked him point blank, look, you're a physical thumper. I mean, that's what you do. You made your game on hitting people. Can you be the same player? And he says, I'm going to be the same player. That's what he said. Now, look, he's not going to play Sunday. He's going to get his feet wet. He's like, there's a lot of rust to shake off is what he said. But, look, this is a guy moving forward that you can – pencil in as a really solid, if not Pro Bowl player on the defensive side, and there's not a lot of guys you can say that. In a perfect world, your two starting safeties for the next 5 years are Clayton Gathers and Malik Hooker. But that being said, two players who have gone through serious injuries, one being Malik Hooker, ACL, MCL, that he's going to be out, indefinitely until we can't even really talk about him returning until maybe camp.
Right.
But the good news is with Clayton Gathers, he believes he's going to be playing football in the next month, and that's a huge boost for the defense because you can move him up in that dime linebacker spot, and he's one of the few guys that can just straight up make plays.
I think back to the offseason when we finally talked to Clayton, and we knew something was up, right?
Yeah.
And the Colts finally admitted, all right, he had neck surgery. Sorry, we didn't tell you.
Yeah.
It's like, huh? So anyway, look, when we talked to him, I believe this was in early June.
We talked to him in May.
Okay, late May.
So 2 months after the fact.
Okay. I remember that conversation because I was struck by just how uncertain he was about his future.
Right.
And when we asked him, so are you going to be okay? And he honestly, he finally said yes, but he admitted that he had to do a lot of thinking about his future, about whether this was something he wanted to even keep doing. So now, granted, it was fresher at the time, and I understand, what that must have been like. I mean, he sat there for 2 months hoping that the inflammation would go down and that it would sort of correct itself. He's got a new baby at home and all that. I mean, what a taxing set of circumstances, right? I get it, but just emotionally, he's come a long way, and that just has to be a good indicator for his prospects. That must mean that what he's heard from the doctors is very, very positive.
And something he said to me today that sticks out even now is, I will be a better man after this process. And I think you've talked to him a couple times. I mean, he's been around the last couple weeks, months, and sort of talking to him in August and September, he wasn't in a great mood. And I get it. You're not on the practice field. Your team's going through camp and the season, and you want to be out there. The last couple of days, last couple of weeks, he's been smiling, and he was a different Clayton Gathers today. Clearly, he's in a good mood. He says he woke up today and there was no pain. He's thrilled at that. and he gets to be on the practice field, which he's obviously happy about. So,
yeah. So on a related note, Malik Hooker, you touched on that just a minute ago. So he goes down on Sunday, just sort of a freak side swipe injury there. He, kind of gets taken out from the side. Two guys playing hard. Apparently wasn't a dirty play. The Jacksonville player who sort of dove in there to try to free up his guy who had the ball. So I get it. Malik wasn't upset about it. But I did talk to Malik today, and one of the things that he told me was, I'll back up. I asked him, so who are you leaning on here, man? Because he's kind of down in the dumps. There's no question about it. This sucks.
He's hobbling around in the locker room.
Yeah, he hadn't even had his surgery yet, so he's got a brace on that goes from his thigh all the way to his ankle, and he's just like he can barely walk, and it's like, man, this sucks. But I was like, man, who are you gonna lean on? He's like, you know what? And he looks over to the locker next to him, and he says, this guy right here, and that guy, that was Clayton Gathers. And he said, he's been through this. And I said, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So they're locker mates.
Yeah.
And which I think is intentional. And I think that he really is going to lean on him. And one thing that he said that it goes to what you just said about Clayton just now. He says, this guy, he's been out here the past 2 months sitting on the sideline, just rehabbing, and it's no fun. And he says he's had a smile on every day, and he's just come to work every single day. He's never late. He's here every day. He does the work. He puts it in, and he's just, one day at a time. And I got to say that's true. We saw Clayton Gathers every single day, and there was no question in my mind that he was at least intent on playing again.
Right.
I didn't know if it was going to happen.
Sometimes
but you can tell.
When guys get hurt, you don't see them again. And I get, hey, man, you do whatever you need to do. Get the treatment wherever you want to get it. But with Clayton Gathers, there was no doubt in his commitment to return this season. And with a neck injury, it's obviously very serious and very troubling. We know that in Indianapolis more than in most places. But he's absolutely was committed to it, and he's clearly gotten some good news in the last couple of weeks if he's cleared to practice.
Yeah, so this is a bummer for Malik because, here are two things. Number one, experience is everything.
Yeah.
Okay, at that age. He's a young football player too now, okay, because he didn't play a lot of high school ball, and he didn't play a lot of college ball. One season as a starter in college. So I think that's the thing here that will sort of be hard to quantify, but we shouldn't forget that Malik Hooker was really benefiting from the experience right now. And he's going to lose out on, 9 more games of experience, and that's not going to help him in the long term. And he's not going to be able to practice in the spring next year, most likely, all those things. So this really does set him back in terms of his trajectory as a developmental player. So it's tough, but I think he'll be back. Look, it's not routine. Guys don't just wave a magic wand and come back from these things. It takes a lot of work, man.
Look at Henry Anderson last year. He was absolutely forgettable as a sophomore, as a second-year player last year, and compare that to his rookie year, it's going to be a long road ahead for Malik Hooker.
Yeah. Sunday was one of the first times I saw Henry really make some plays. He didn't make enough of them, obviously. No one did. But I saw Henry flash a couple times on Sunday, and this is a guy who is at least a year and a half removed from an ACL. So it's a bitch. Okay, it's just is what it is, man.
Yeah.
So let's not just. I know that we all have a tendency now because of medical advances to just say, "Oh, he's got an ACL. He'll be back next year." Well, it doesn't work that way.
No.
And being back and being yourself are two different things too. So I wish I had better news there. But the one other bit of good injury news is Denzel Good's back out there today as well. And boy, could they use him.
Oh, yeah.
Anywhere on the offensive line.
To his credit, he was solid in the opener in L.A.
Yeah.
And the crazy story is, didn't even know he got hurt. He was on the plane ride home. The coach said, everyone good? He said, I'm good. He took a nap. He woke up, and his wrist was a balloon. He went back and watched the tape, he said 3 or 4 times, trying to find the play where he hurt his wrist, and he couldn't find it. This is a rare story. We talk to guys who get hurt all the time. Yeah. He didn't even know when he got hurt. And this was a situation where he was put on IR, the intent to bring him back, and he is coming back in the middle of October. That's strange.
Yeah, he tore a ligament in his wrist, and to have no earthly idea when it happened. I've never heard of such a thing.
Chuck didn't mention him, and there were injuries after the game or anything. This was a surprise to the team.
We thought we were being lied to.
Yeah, but this is a surprise to the team. It's a surprise to Denzel.
So, yeah, but he told me the same story. He fell asleep on the flight. He's like, huh, look at that. That's weird. And so, yeah, it was very strange. But he's got, I would say, 2 more weeks before he can actually play in a game. So I think the best case scenario for Denzel Good would be, let's see what they have. Do they have 3 more games before the bye? 2?
Yeah, Pittsburgh. They play at Cincinnati, at Houston, and then they host Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
then the bye.
Yeah, so the Pittsburgh game is probably the best case scenario for Denzel Good. But if he comes back, I think then they have some options. They can perhaps put Joe Haig back at guard maybe and have Denzel Good play tackle. I think that would be a good outcome.
I think if healthy and effective, he's your right tackle.
Yeah.
I think he earned that in camp, and he talked about that today. He worked for 6 weeks to earn that job. He earned it. He played pretty well.
He lost 30 pounds, by the way.
Freak injury. And he sounds better. He sounds more confident than obviously when he came here as a rookie a couple years ago. And, the 7th-round pick out of Mars Hill, which we all had to look up. What the hell is Mars Hill?
Is that a thing?
Right.
So, yeah, that's something to watch there long term. Now, Zach, you talked about this earlier, the defensive numbers. Let me start by saying this. I thought the defense was trending the right way this year. And no, initially, like there were a couple games.
So did I.
And now I don't know. And the numbers are just they're oh my God, they're sickening.
Do you have the bourbon handy? Because you're gonna need it.
Yeah.
And I mean to those out there that are gonna hear these.
I was gonna say, can I get some? But go ahead.
They're on pace to give up 507 points. That's the most in team history. They're on pace to give up 6,806 yards. That's the most in team history. They're on pace to give up 66 sacks. That's the most in Indianapolis Colts history. And they're on pace to throw for just 7 touchdowns. I mean, I even rounded that up. And that's obviously the fewest in team history. So it's hard to explain because I see progress in certain parts of the defense, especially on the line, but they're giving up too many chunk plays, and they can't get off the field, and they're committing too many dumb penalties, and they're just – I mean, it's the worst defense in the league. The numbers bear it out, and we watch it every week. Maybe we're just getting numb to it.
Yeah, it could be that because when you put it in those terms, in the statistical terms, I can't defend it.
I mean, and
right?
you do have to say, like, yeah, teams are throwing the ball more than ever, and they're scoring more points more than ever. I get that in the last 5-10 years.
Right.
But on the alternative side, I mean – 2 of the last 3 years, they've given up the most points in team history. I mean, all of a sudden, Greg Minuski's defenses don't look that bad.
Okay, don't get me started on that, by the way. So every time I watch Washington play and they show Minuski on the sideline, I'm like, I remember him. Listen, he wasn't exactly blessed with amazing talent either, okay? You talk about a guy who was making chicken salad every Sunday.
Here's the best way to describe Minuski. And I've talked to Coach Venturi about this a lot. I'm sure you hear him on 1070. He's great. He will cut it as it is. Minuski would get.
By the way, they should hear Rich Venturi when he doesn't have to meet FCC regulations.
Right. Thursday mornings, Colts facility. Anybody's welcome. it's the best hour you'll spend all week.
Anyway, go ahead.
But look, I mean, Minuski was good enough to have. The Colts would beat the Titans. They would beat the Jags. They'd beat the teams they were supposed to beat. They would keep those offenses in check. Now, he would get his hand handed to him by the Pittsburghs and by the New Englands because he didn't have the talent to keep up with those. So that's the downfall. He's not Dick LeBeau out there. But he was good enough to keep it to 15-18, which is where you want to keep the points at for the most of the time. I mean, the Colts won 33 games in 3 years with his defense, and they were not stacked on defense by any means. Now they're giving up, ridiculous numbers to Jared Goff and Brian Hoyer and Blake Bortles on Sunday. It's hard to make the case Teddy Monachino has been any better than Greg Minuski with comparable talent, which means no talent.
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to say this. I think you can make the argument that Pagano's coaching staff prior to
I'm Pep Hamilton.
Okay. So, right. Follow me here. His coaching staff prior to the contract extension, okay, which was what, January 16?
Correct.
Right? January of 2016. You know what happened? They had that kumbaya, Ryan Grigson, Chuck Pagano, you get contract extensions, 10:30 press conference.
Tied at the hip.
But anyway, what happened the next day? Chuck fired half his staff.
Right.
Okay.
More than half his staff.
More than half, most of his staff. And I think there was certainly an understanding between Irsay, Grigson, and Pagano that were going to make changes, but I think that was short-sighted. I think they had a better staff then than they do now. I know it would sound to a lot of people like, oh, well, why does that even matter? I'm just telling you, I feel like they had a better coaching staff then. I feel like right now we're not seeing I'm not saying we saw a lot of development then, but we're certainly not seeing any now. And I think defensively, they did more with less then than they're doing now.
That's exactly what they did. And offensively, and this is not a popular opinion to have, I'm sure, but back then, Pep Hamilton got a lot of grief for a lot of weird play calls and stop and start stuff, and I get that.
Too cute sometimes.
I get that. Yep. And he wasn't perfect, and he wasn't Tom Moore by any means. But look, they were top 5 just about every year, and Andrew Luck threw for 40 touchdowns in 2014. 40 touchdowns. That's the second most in team history besides Peyton Manning's 49. So, look, they weren't perfect, but they were putting points on the board. Now they can't do anything.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, two things. That Pep Hamilton did manage to win some games with Matt Hasselbeck that year. And I know Matt came back and played some games with Jasinski too and had some success. So I'm not taking that away from him. But I think if you look at right now, I don't know if I would argue I don't know if Pep Hamilton ever struggled the way Rob Jasinski's struggling right now.
It's
now,
hard.
The circumstances aren't the same,
right?
But it's bad out there.
I'll defend Jasinski to a degree because I think he's been pretty solid overall. Yeah. I think he was great last year with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck wasn't practicing very much last year. He was playing through pain, and they still put up enough points. They put up 34 in the opener at home and lose. Come on, that's not on the offense.
Yeah.
But right now, and I understand he's got a rookie quarterback, and I'm going to still call Brissett a rookie quarterback because he's on his, 8th or 9th start. He didn't have camp here. He's still learning the system. Teams are starting to catch on to him a little bit because he really struggled on Sunday.
Yeah.
Chazinski's done okay. The last couple of weeks have been very, very rough, and it's on him, and that 4th and 2 was abysmal.
They had the wrong personnel in the game, apparently, is what I was told.
Why do they keep making these mistakes?
But that's what I'm saying. I don't understand.
Week 8.
I don't understand how that even happens after a timeout. You know what you're calling. Call your personnel group and get them out there. I don't know. That hasn't been fully explained to me how it happened, but that's what happened. It wasn't that they never called the quarterback sneak. That was never the intent. There was a different play call, but they couldn't run the play because the right people weren't in the game.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why.
And there's points in these press conferences with these coaches, and we talked to Chuck a little bit ago that, he keeps saying we just got to play better. We can't keep making these same mistakes. Chuck, it's week 7, man. It's October. You know
what? What that is. He doesn't know what else to say, right? As you well know. But you talked about Brissett. I want to touch on him real quick, and I think we've both kind of gone back and rewatched the game a little bit. And one thing, I actually had a talk with Brissett about this today. You talked earlier, Zach, about defenses catching on to him, and here's what they're realizing. They see a young quarterback, and so that already means you're going to see a lot of pressure. But they're also learning that he is not handling the blitz well. So you know what's going to happen? They're going to blitz even more.
Yeah, and he holds the ball too long, and this is not, something we're new to in this town, perhaps. Andrew Luck, if there is one, flaw in his game that jumps out, he does hold the ball on a little bit too long. Andrews admitted that. Brissett, I think, holds it on the 5th longest of any quarterback in football, according to Pro Football Focus, and it was rough on Sunday.
And so what's happening here is, and I asked him, I said, when you went back and watched the film, did you see some throws you should have made? And he's like, oh, yeah, I know. I got to work on it. And he said it today. I thought for the first time he really said it plainly. He said, I got to get rid of the football.
There were some check downs that he missed.
Yeah.
And it's easy for us to say because we're not getting our head beat in. But
he made a great point to me. I said, so you got to beat the blitz, right? And I said, you're going to go play Cincinnati, and all they do is blitz. He says, yep. So I said, you guys got to beat it at some point for them to back off. He says, yeah, but he said, he wanted to be clear, and I think this was a great point. He says, people think when you say beat the blitz, it means go to TY 50 yards over the top. No, all it means is you just got to know where to go with the ball. And if they're blitzing from your right, then who's your left-handed check down, right? Find that guy. And it might be Kamar Aiken for 8 yards, but it's not a sack.
Right, exactly. That's 18 yards of difference, 10 yards
exactly.
sack. And those are the things you watch guys like Brady and Breeze and You know, I was watching the Sunday night game, and they were coming after him, and he was just making the smart little throws that go for 5 yards that keep a drive going, and the Colts are doing the opposite. They're losing 12 yards, and they're going to 3rd and 20. And
yeah, you got no shot.
Let's be honest. I mean, he's a rookie quarterback taking his lumps.
Yeah, so when I say these things, a lot of people kind of get defensive and say, well, I mean, you know, they got to help him out. He's young. Yeah, I know. That's the problem. I can't help you. I mean, I can't change that.
Right.
But these are the realities. And if they're going to be competitive in any form or fashion, then he's going to have to do that. And if he doesn't, it's going to be bad. And the offensive line is challenged right now, okay, and they are not at full strength. I mean, Mike Person was playing center for half the game. I don't even know who Mike Person is. I don't know what he looks like. Okay, but he was playing center because Ryan Kelly was out of the game.
The powerful inside of the line combination of Jeremy Vujnovic, Mike Person, and LaRaven Clark.
I mean, you're loving that, aren't you? That's a winning combination.
When fans say, "Why bring Andrew Luck back to play behind that line?" they have a point.
I still say you bring him back, but I get it. So anyway, we're probably going long here. We should probably wind this down. But anyway, we told you that we'd make you feel better, and I think we accomplished that. I'm pretty sure we did. I mean, we just gave you all kinds of good nuggets to chew on and feel good about. So I don't know. I think our work is done here, frankly, don't you?
Hopefully you're smarter about the Indianapolis Colts, not necessarily in a better mood or inspired or feeling good about your team, but you're smarter.
For what that's worth. We didn't do wood choppers, and maybe it's just as well. I have one wood chopper, actually. I'm giving it to Malik Hooker for walking off the field after an ACL and MCL tear.
That's where we're at.
Chopping wood, baby.
His choice to walk off the field.
Yeah, he said that. He said that today. He's like, I was like, he was asked. I didn't ask, but he said, it was asked, why did you walk off the field? And he's like, man, I told him if I can walk, I'm walking. I'm not getting on a cart. So he walked.
My wood choppers of the week are the fans that were in the stadium in the fourth quarter on Sunday. You guys are my heroes, and you guys are serious wood choppers. If you spent your hard-earned money on that game and you stayed, good for you. You deserve a good team. You deserve a better performance than that. And you deserve a better press conference than the one we got Sunday from Chuck as well.
You the real MVPs. So, my KD voice. So, listen, the good news here is if you don't have tickets, this might be a good time to go find some.
Someone told me on Twitter that he flies in from California for every home game. He's been a season ticket holder for years. Man, I
actually get a lot of comments like that. There's a lot of people who do that more than I ever imagined, and all I can say is they're better people. They're more faithful than I am. Let's put it that way. I'm not that faithful to anything in my life, I don't think. Okay, maybe my wife. But
the only thing that's left is the only thing that's pulling them up is the potential return of Andrew Luck, which could come, which could come this season.
Yeah, and just give it another month or 6 weeks or so, and right around the corner. So anyway, I think that's enough sunshine. I'm sure you can't take any more. We don't want to blow it all at once. We'll save some sunshine for next week. So we're gonna get out of here. I'm Stephen Holder with Zach Keefer. Thanks for listening. We'll be back every week with more chopping wood. And before we go, got some good stuff coming. You got some stuff on Clayton Gathers, and I've got a couple quarterback stories that I think will be thought provoking. One on a quarterback who's playing and one on a quarterback who's not. So stay tuned for that later this week. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. Stephen Holder with Zach Keefer. This is Chopping Wood.